pal Traynor, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me, mate. It's a pleasure.
Mate, for the couple of people that may not know who you are that are listening, which seems a little bit bizarre to me personally in this industry, just seeing you pop up everywhere and anywhere throughout this fitness business realm, and we're going to go into that later. But can you just give us a brief on who you are and what you do?
Yeah, awesome. So I'm based here in Melbourne, Victoria, and I guess a little bit about me. I come through the industry as a PT initially. That was kind of my first love in a sense when, coming into the fitness industry. And now I find myself as, I wouldn't say a business coach. I would probably say more a business educator. I think there's a bit of a difference there. And, so what my company is Elite Vitality Coaching. And basically what we do is we're working towards being known as a business school. So we truly want to provide unrivaled education on first principles and the core foundations of how to run a successful business. So we run courses, we do consulting, we do a lot of different things, but everything that we do is really centered around delivering education, business education to anyone in the health and fitness industry. The last kind of 12 months, we've really started to deal with a wide range of people, from osteopaths to therapists, facility owners all around the world. So it's been really, really cool to see that happen. But yeah, I would say primarily what we do is deliver business education to the fitness industry.
And I guess the branching of all those different sort of industry within an industry, all the principles are essentially the same, right? Like as long as you nail those foundational course concepts, you can apply it to any industry.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely. I don't learn from fitness business people, a lot of my learning comes from business people. And I think, a lot of the time, and I would probably say one of the biggest problems that I see in the industry is that there's a one-way fits all kind of mindset. And that's probably created from, the Russell Brunson, that kind of realm, the owner of ClickFunnels, where they're producing and over the last 10 years produced a lot of people in the fitness industry, in all industries, but this kind of funnel mindset, which I just, I'm not necessarily saying it's wrong, but I think, one thing you said before is principles, right? And the first thing we get taught in training and nutrition is to follow principles, right? Why? Because it allows us to think for ourselves and think critically and laterally about our training and our physiology and a lot of the different things that we need to manage in order to get us a result. And it's no different with business, but for some reason it doesn't get taught that way, and I think it leaves a lot of people fragile. So it definitely crosses over, and that's the thing is, when you understand these business principles, you can cross it over into many different businesses.
I think it's at least my sort of belief is the why behind the answer is almost more important than the answer itself, because then you can apply it to the many rather than the few.
Yeah, well, the biggest problem we see is there's a lot of imitation, right? Like it's much easier to imitate someone than it is to think for yourself. The only problem is it leaves you fragile. And we've all experienced that, like you said before, something that we kind of say a lot of things that we don't know we say. And, when somebody asks us a question, we don't necessarily, it's just, I would say 60 to 70% of the time we do, but then there's also that part of us that just spurts something out. And what I think you want to try to do is you want to try to talk about things that you understand, firstly. And, it's much, I was actually talking about this today with somebody, but it's much easier to imitate someone and even lie, like there is a lot of lies going on in the fitness industry. And there's a quote, and it's, it's easy to sell your soul for $1 because the devil's always buying. And that kind of is what rings home to me, is like it's easy to imitate because people will pay you money for imitation. Now the problem is when the world changes, as we've seen over the last 12 months, when the world changes, or somebody challenges you, either one, you're probably going to be left extremely fragile, and then that fragility could lead to some, the building blocks falling down, and shit hitting the fan. And when that happens, you need to be able to deal with it, and it's going to cost you time and money. And I guess that's the kind of drive home point is, you know, I guess for anyone listening, especially in business, right? Like, we look at what happened this year. Those who truly understood, first business principles were probably the ones who could adapt the quickest, right? They were the ones who, example is, if you understood brand and you'd actually put work into brand over the last couple of years, you would have found it pretty easy to pivot into something, that does actually align with your brand, but maybe a different business model. So, you know, yeah, there is a lot of imitation and probably untruth in the industry. But I think as a business owner, as an individual, you probably want to start to steer away from that and truly understand things on a deeper level so you can think for yourself.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think even we only have to look at basic nutritional principles. Going back to what you said with nutrition, is creating a calorie deficit. Cool, we know you need to be in that. Most people just be like, yeah, you just need to eat less and move more. And you're like, cool, but why? And what are some of those actual principles? And why does that matter? And why does understanding that matter? And how do you apply that to, a 49-year-old single mother of two with an extremely stressful lifestyle, poor stress management skills, and poor sleep habits? Like, can you just give her a calorie deficit? What's that going to do for her health? But once you
Or
understand the concepts of that and understand the base principles, you're like, okay, well, maybe I don't start her there. I need to start
yeah,
something
or
else.
when it doesn't work, right? That's the
Yeah.
that's the main thing. When it doesn't work, can you just continue to say to that lady? Can you continue to say to her, eat less, move more, and keep driving her into the ground? And you're literally throwing somebody else's health down the drain purely because you don't have a deep enough understanding about the thing that you're trying to teach. You're purely imitating, and that's a really small example of a really big problem that exists across the board, not just in the fitness industry, but across the board. And it's happened to me. Like, I've said things early on and that I truly didn't understand, and they always come back to bite you on the ass. That's the thing. And I think everybody's done that. Everybody has gone through that. The key to this is learning, right? Is understanding, and not just continuing to do that because you're trying to make a quick buck, or you're trying to skip the line or skip the queue, in a sense, right? It's like, uh, I truly, the people I look up to the most are the people with the deepest amount of knowledge within their field. I think that these got people that can think critically, probably have the most sustainable careers over a long period of time.
Mm. And those same people will happily say, I don't know. And that's the super interesting thing to me, is that the smarter these people get, and the bigger the influence that they have, they're happy to put their hand up and say, I don't know, but let me go do more research. And it leads them into their own sort of innovation.
110%.
So I'm going to go back to PT and getting into that realm. And then firstly, why you made that transition. I'd assume you were potentially running on a rental basis, your own sort of thing. Why you made that transition and how that transition occurred from just being a PT to more of a PT educator.
Yeah, it's a really interesting story, man. So I was a PT working out of a good life. So, and started at the bottom. I came into the industry because I love training. I love, fitness. It was pretty much all I knew. I did a year at university in a marketing degree. And so I did get a bit of I guess a little, you might say, toe in the water type thing when it come to business, but I didn't really enjoy it, to be honest. Like that's why I ended up going into the fitness industry as a personal trainer. But I would say that for the first year, I really struggled, to the point where I didn't really make much money. And I was 19 at the time. So, I came into the industry, and my mum actually, at the time I was living with her, and she met this new guy, right? And anyway, this new guy and her ended up moving away, and they kind of started a little life on their own. And my mum's looked after me, as a single mother since I was about 4 years old. So me loving my mum, I kind of said, okay, well, I'm not going to stop her, I'm not going to kick up a fuss. I'm just going to get on with it. And, very quickly I found that I was put under a lot of pressure. I was a 19-year-old running a business at the time, had no idea that I was even running a business, like, to be honest. And obviously had to pay my own bills, had to buy my own food, had to do all of this. And straight away that kicked me into gear and made me realize that I really had to probably turn this into a bit of a career. So, over 2 years, I ended up building my business up to a reasonable amount, and got some pretty quick success, where I was booked out. And naturally, when you start achieving success, you kind of want to make some changes, and you kind of dream of what's possible. And I ended up actually wanting to move my business from a club a suburb called Point Cook to a suburb called Port Melbourne, which is more in the city. I wanted to live the city life, right? And that was what my vision of success was. And just to give context, they're about 45 minutes apart, in terms of, probably about 40-minute drive. So that gives you some context. So anyway, me being young me, I went and signed a lease up in St Kilda at the time, which is the next suburb away from Port Melbourne. And I went to Good Life and I said, hey, can you chuck me on a passport? So a passport at the time was you're only paying 1.5 in rent, instead of the double rent to work out of 2 gyms. Again, me being young me, I signed the lease for my apartment first. And then I went back to Good Life and they actually took the carpet from underneath me and basically told me were going to charge me double rent, for both my businesses. Went back on their word, and a week later I lost my license. So, me being silly, that losing my license was my fault and something that I learned from. But I was now stuck with working out of 2 gyms with no car that were 45 minutes apart, with my primary business being 40 minutes away. So I was in a bit of a pickle, right? And it was probably the hardest 6 months of my life. I reckon I was getting up at about 3:30 every day, 3:30 a.m., getting on the train to the gym to start at 5:30. And then I would come back at, around 12. I would walk from the station to the gym, um, do a little bit of training, and then start building up my business. And I would leave and walk home at about 8:30 at night, get home at 10, start again. I did that for 6 months. And what it kind of showed me was I never want to do that again. And I need to start to think about what's my life going to look like at 30? What's my life going to look like at 40? Right? Like, I do not want to be doing these ridiculous mornings and late nights anymore. So then that made me start to look into the business side of things, because throughout that time I go, I'm a good trainer, uh, whatever we call good is relative. But in my eyes, I was busy. So I was doing okay. And I was like, okay, business for me was the thing that would, teach me how to leverage my time better and to kind of start to earn more money without simply selling my time. So that got me my interest in business. And then my interest in business started to attract people that were looking for my advice on business. And, what I really started to find is my passion for business, my love for business started to grow from there. The more I studied it, the more I loved it. And not just because it was earning me more money or anything like that. I just really love the dynamic of business, the broad skill set that you need to have. You're going from mathematics to accounting to psychology to, uh, there's so many different realms that business touches, within the different subjects that you have to learn. And I just, man, I really built a passion for business to the point where I started to build a bit of a side hustle, and it was mentoring PTs from the business side of things, um, and that built up to a pretty good business where it was to the point where I could have left personal training altogether and simply done that, and I would have been okay. Um, the only problem is the model that I was running. I truly didn't believe that the model was the best thing for the PT. And that model was the model of a revenue share model. I'll put my hand up and say that I truly don't think that is a good way to mentor a personal trainer. I think that you need to give these people the ability to grow without you continuously taking more. So give them the leverage instead of you taking it. And that was where I really pivoted, man, and I went all in into business education, and started to build out a consulting firm, which we have now. Which we deliver business consulting to people in the business owners in the fitness industry, and now we're into short courses as well, which they're highly leverageable for the individual. They give the individual the ability to grow without continuous take from our side of things. So it was a bit of as I said, it was a bit of my own wisdom and kind of experiences that made me really start to focus on business. And then it was my love and passion for business as a subject to learn about, that I still to this day do it with ease. I could spend all day just courses, books, everything, mentors, and it's something that I really do love. So that's kind of led me to where we are now. Long story short, well,
Yeah,
short story long.
I love that. I love that it wasn't necessarily business that was the passion. As you said, you went to marketing, didn't really dig it, but it became the passion just through sheer work, and you sort of searched for it in a subconscious way, and it ended up just presenting itself, and you dove deep and had the, I guess, the courage enough to go, you know what, this is what it is. Like, this is what actually fuels my fire. I'm going to give this everything I've got.
Yeah, and it was, and a big part of that as well, I must add, was the fact that I truly thought business was being taught wrongly by both the big corporations, whether that was on purpose or not. We can leave that for another day. And also, other business coaches out there. I truly thought at the time that there was a big blitz for advertising, or Facebook advertising. And although it is a part of it, advertising is not business. There's so many more things that you need to know in order to run a sustainable business. And I just thought that it was being taught wrong. I thought we were only giving them fitness business owners one piece of the puzzle, and that would leave them fragile. So once advertising, the era of advertising passes, or once things stop working, what happens to the business after that? And are we teaching them the full scope that allows them to actually create a long-term sustainable career? And that's the thing, and a rewarding one. Like, I want people to build wealth. I want people to make an impact in the industry. I want people to be able to feed their families. So how can we create and start to change the way the industry perceives business? And that's really what our brand vision is.
So we spoke about sort of passion and business. How are you letting that passion drive your actions in business now?
Yeah. So, I mean, we are very futuristic in the way we think about business. So we always try to bring what the future is going to hold combined with what we've seen and experienced. So we're always trying to innovate in a sense. Now, my passion probably comes from two main areas. My individual passion comes from my absolute, could probably say, desire to be a really great dad in life. I would say individually, I'm not a dad yet, but I know that's the one fucking thing I want to do really well. So that for me is like, it's a legacy thing internally. So it's, my passion is self-driven it's mastery. It's to become the best possible person I can and achieve the most that I possibly can. And that all stems back to wanting to be a great dad, and not being a great dad to try flick the switch when it all happens, but start to build that legacy now, and I give myself the best chance to be a great dad by not having to rush into success or try to achieve copious amounts of money in one short period of time because we're broke or anything like that. But it also is about the way I treat people. It's about the way I do things, with integrity. That's truly what my goal is to build a legacy of integrity. And it the integrity part is not necessarily, for me, it's about learning from your mistakes. No one's perfect. Like, I've made mistakes in the past, but I learn from them, and I definitely always try to learn and make sure that I learn from them because of that exact principle. I do want to be a great dad, and that comes down to every little minuscule of how I act. And probably the second thing that drives my passion is the fact that I actually believe that business is taught wrong. I truly believe to this day, business is taught incorrectly. I think it's taught based on short-term sales tactics. I think where social media has amplified one's inability to actually wait for something long-term. And I think, we're all looking for the quick pill, and unfortunately, business is taught that way too, and we're not teaching people first principles subjects. We're not giving people the ability to think for themselves, and we're just kind of feeding into individuals' desires for something to happen really quick and to be done for them. And unfortunately, it creates a really fragile industry to the point where COVID-19 hits in Australia, and 70, I think it was 77% of business owners in Australia wouldn't survive beyond 4 weeks without government assistance, which for me, that's fucking ludicrous. Like, 4 weeks, this is a month, and 70% of businesses would go under. Like that says a little bit about the way business is taught in our industry. And it means that, they're all built on a house of cards. And um, if you have the inability to think critically, laterally, and deeply about your strategic decisions in business, then unfortunately you're fragile and you're a prisoner to the economy, you're a prisoner to society, and you'll always just be chasing tail. And I don't want that for people. I don't want that for the industry. So
So we've spoken, and you mentioned a lot about principles. Can we, or would you mind just clarifying what a principle actually is, and maybe if you can just sharing one of the principles that you sort of live by, or potentially that Elite Vitality lives by?
yeah, so you know, the way I think about things is first principle thinking. So we're always trying to boil things down to these, I guess, rules, right? That allow us to, or frameworks that allow us to think laterally. So, when I think of a principle, I'm really thinking, and especially in business, this is where it becomes really important, right? I'm thinking less about tactics. So I'm thinking less about a sales script, and I'm thinking more, right, about a sales process, right? Or we're looking at a first principle of sales in a sense, right? And we could kind of boil this down to many different things, but the way for me that I like to look at business is I need to understand a lot of these first principles across the different elements of business. So example is I need to understand accounting and finance. I need to understand brand. I need to understand marketing. I need to understand operations. I need to understand what are some other ones? There's plenty out there, right? That we could rattle off. But I think for me, that's the way business should be taught. Because if I don't, like example is if I only know how to market, but I don't know how to create more efficiency through my operations, and I don't know these first principles that underlie operational efficiency, or even have any idea of it, then I'm left fragile. Because if I'm not acquiring more customers than I'm keeping, then my business doesn't grow. But if I don't know that this whole operational efficiency and service delivery actually exists over here, and all I'm focusing on is my marketing, I could be literally butting my head up against a wall for the next 10 years. And I don't even know it, because all I've been taught is advertising. So when it comes to first principles, right? Like we teach business, and we're always innovating this and trying to come up with this. But for me, one of the biggest things that you can look at, right? And the way we like to teach business is there are really, in my eyes, 4 levels of business, right? So you got to think about this. Anybody who's been in business probably longer than 3 years can attest to this. The second you start a business, the number one thing you want is stability. You will do everything you can to find stability, right, within your company, financial stability, brand stability, all of this. But you'll always be looking to find this kind of baseline, this stability. Once I get that stability, the next thing I want is growth, right? So once I become stable, once I've been around the block a few times, and I've my business becomes profitable, and I've got a good hold of my finances, and we find that stability, we want to start to grow this thing, right? And this is where most people get to, right? They kind of grow this thing to this point where they're almost busting out of their pants, in terms of business, right? And they become time poor, right? They're earning great money, but they become time poor. They don't know how to they don't know how to overcome that, or I guess leverage their way past that business that is purely selling their time for money, right? So they get this growth. The third level is autonomy, right? So once we get that growth, once we get really busy, we're still earning pretty good money, but we get really, really busy and time poor and frustrated. What ends up happening is all we want is freedom. We're like, fuck, I would love a business that just simply didn't rely on my time to earn money. And then basically what you have is this feedback loop of, we're always continuously growing the business and then trying to find autonomy, growing the business, trying to find autonomy. Like I could grow the business, find autonomy. Once I get that autonomy, I actually need to grow the business again, right? To continue to make progress. So, and then eventually, once you get to the point where your acquisition and growth is autonomous, the whole company is autonomous, where your business, you could go away for 3 or 4 months and come back and the business would still grow. It would still kind of, and it would still grow without you and autonomously. Then, you really give yourself the best possible chance to actually start really making an impact on a global scale, right? That's what we call legacy. And the way we teach it, and the way I like to think about this, is we teach certain subjects the first principles of different subjects, and we believe there are certain subjects that underpin or at least give you the best possible ability to reach that next level in business. So there are certain subjects that are going to help you find stability. There are certain subjects that are going to help you find growth and achieve growth. There are certain subjects that are going to help you achieve autonomy. And then there are certain subjects that are going to help you achieve legacy. Now, within those subjects, there are going to be first principles that you need to follow so that way, when you're, think about it, if you've experienced, even just the first 3 legs, at any one point in time with the problems you are faced in business, you can think strategically about them because you have pretty much acquired the skill set and the knowledge to think critically about business yourself, right? So that is what makes business. Not only can you compound growth, but you can sustain that growth long term without relying on some other coach or anything like that. And that should be the goal. Like if I'm not trying to leave this industry in a better place than I came into it, what the fuck am I even doing here? Do you know what I mean? And that's the way we look at business in a sense. That's our whole system in a nutshell. And we're always innovating and trying to find better ways for people to digest it. But for us, it's like, okay, this framework allows us to go, okay, this is where you're at. Maybe you've just achieved stability. Now you need growth. Okay, so we're going to teach you these subjects. We're going to teach you these first principles. And then we're going to, you're now equipped with the ability to think critically and make strategic decisions about your business to get to maybe that next level of autonomy or whatever that next level is for you.
I firstly respect and appreciate you guys so much for doing everything that you've just done, because when you were speaking, it took me back to when I did my certification. There was a business, I want to call it a module, it wasn't a course within there, and just some of the concepts that they spoke about, I was just like, I feel I'm dumber for doing this. Like, I've got no fucking idea what the hell's going on. And not one of those modules mentioned anything that you just spoke about. And doing business sort of courses here and there, and a lot of my clients being very high powered business executives themselves, being interested in business, speaking about a lot of different concepts with them, just to get advice for myself as a PT, an online PT. Even they didn't mention the things that you spoke about just then, which is kind of scary, knowing that these sort of bigger corporations are essentially, pulling money from PTs and other people in other industries that are trying to just better themselves, better their families, create a legacy for themselves, and them not being able to provide enough information to help to actually really and truly help this person.
Their business model, big box gyms, is built on people not showing up to the gym and PTs not knowing how to outgrow the gym. That's simple math. You look at all the big corporations, right? So, you look at all these corporations and you go, okay, who are the top 4 RTOs in the industry actually partnered with? Okay, well, they're partnered with the big box gyms. Well, so it wouldn't make, and the big box gyms, if a big part of their business model is PTs paying rent. So, well, you look at their managers. Their managers get paid commission based on how much rent they're bringing in, not the success of those PTs, right? So, what they're doing is they're just bringing anybody into a position, because guess what? If this gym can cover 30% of its overheads by having PTs in there, simply paying rent, that means, potentially maybe what they're doing is creating a system where, uh, you know, their first client might be profitable. Their first customer, their first gym member might make them profitable. And this is just, when you understand business on a deeper level, you can actually think about this and it makes sense, right? And this is what, that's the model that they're running. And you know what, man, like, fuck it, I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's their model, they're doing it that way. And I think what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to empower these individuals to be able to think this critically about their business and beat that system, because at the end of the day, right, they're still providing opportunities for people in the industry. So we know this, there's people that get really successful and outgrow those, but their game is making sure the majority don't. So it wouldn't make sense, right, for the RTOs to then do this big education around business and then pass them on to their partners and then outgrow them in half a year or a year. It just wouldn't. They'd actually prefer people to fail, in my opinion. I mean, I'm this is my opinion. This is not anybody else. It's not fact, right? But if you're asking me, my mind takes me to this system, right, where, okay, we all know that when you sign up to one of these big box gyms, they charge you a fee, right? It's like a $3,000 one-off fee, right? Or something of that nature, for absolutely nothing. Like, it might be like a level 1 kettlebell course and a t-shirt, right? And it's like, okay, so not only are they making $3,000 per sign up, but then, you're $300 a week or whatever that is. So on a minimum term, they're making 18K per PT they bring in, right? So they've got this really good system where they're either getting people who don't know how to outgrow them, which, they love, or they're just making 18K every time they sign a new PT, right? So, our goal as a company, right, is to make sure that we can start to increase the percentage of people, right, that can start to outgrow that system so they can achieve their wildest fucking dreams, right? And that's just the way I think about it, right? I mean, I could be wrong with some of these things, but I've done my research and I've come up through that system, and I believe I have a good grasp on it, in terms of how it works. So that's my opinion, and I'm pretty strong about it.
Um, so I wanted to, I mean, perhaps this touches on one of the principles, and I think that principle would be marketing potentially. And in such a competitive market that we're in, especially in the online training space, it seems that anybody with a set of abs or a great ass can now call themselves a personal trainer or an educator, which is absolutely fucking ridiculous, but it is the way it is. How do you create attention as a personal trainer, for the guys listening, or yourself as an educator in such a competitive market? I mean, is it through finding your own niche? Is it just through pure volume of content? Is it through education? Like, how do you find that attention and create that attention, should I say?
Yeah, I mean, like, I mean, we're looking in the realm of, I would probably say, marketing and brand, right? So one of the biggest mistakes I see, business owners make is they try to jump straight into marketing without actually solidifying and creating a brand for themselves, and understanding the core principles of brand. So brand for me it's a GPS on how to make strategic decisions in your business. So when we're thinking about brand, we're going, how can I create clarity in the minds of our customers and audience on the vision we're trying to achieve? And we do that through creating positive associations, right? So when I'm building a brand, I'm thinking about what are the associations that I want to create in the mind of my customer. Okay, so that's the first one. Now, the way and a big part of that is differentiation, right? So how can I start to differentiate myself from my competitors, right? So I need to get an understanding of how I want to feel internally first. And this is why a lot of people struggle with it, because building a brand means a lot of the time it's going to be your belief system. And if you're not clear on your belief system and you haven't done the internal work and you don't know how you want to feel about your business and you don't know how you want to make others feel, you're going to struggle. So that's the first step. And then after that, it's about differentiation. So how can I differentiate from my competitors? And then through that differentiation, it's differentiation about how do we do things differently, right? So, there could be two physique coaches standing there, potentially, or two osteopaths, but how they do what they do and how they get people a result needs to be different from one another. So most people in this day and age, they say, well, I'm evidence based, I'm results based, and all of a sudden you're not differentiated anymore, right? So and you got to think everything that comes out of your mouth as a business owner is creating an association for your brand, whether you like it or not, right? So my opinion, or not my opinion, like it's known fact that the best companies in the world, the companies that have the largest profit margins, have world-class brands. Example is Tesla. Tesla's the most valuable car company in the world. They spend $0 on advertising. Why? Because they have a fucking world-class brand, right? So the first thing is brand differentiation and creating positive associations around that differentiation. The second principle is, through marketing, right? So one of the things that changed the way I look at business and marketing as a whole is farming versus fishing. I can't remember what book I read it in, but it was amazing because it really does talk about having different channels, right? So once I have my brand, right, and I've created the brand, which is that first piece of the puzzle, we then have different things out there, such as social media. Podcasting is now becoming really big. We've got paid advertising. There's all these different avenues that we can use to market our brand. But how which ones we choose should be based on, because it is a strategic decision, it should be based on my brand. So my brand is this guidance system. So example, let's say that one of my my associations is premium, right? So, if I'm trying to create a premium look to what I do, then the social media content that I post is either going to create a premium association or it's not. So that is an example, right? So an example of this I'm going to give you an example of what we did. We just invested 15K into our most recent course, right? A lot of money, right? No matter who you are in a course, to create motion graphics, right? Which costs a lot of money, and really high end video, because we want to be known as a premium brand. If I start putting up video, if if one of the associations I'm creating and through my articles, through our videos, through our posts, start to put out this message that we're a premium brand, and then my course is recorded on a fucking 2004 iPhone 3, there's going to be there's going to be a mix up there. There's going to be friction. So all of a sudden, we're not going to create that association. There's not going to be clarity around who we are as a brand and what we're trying to achieve, right? So that is an example of how brand guides our strategic decision making. Just a little one. And then with marketing, it's farming versus fishing. So planting seeds, right? That's what farmers do. And then those seeds eventually grow. I think one of the biggest mistakes, and this is again, the tactical mindset that's being taught, from a marketing perspective, and even just, I remember, being a PT kind of coming into the industry, as soon as somebody told you no, that meant no, and they were gone, right? Whereas, and that's because we're taught direct, what is it? Free session followed by a sales consult. And if they don't sign up, we'll never see them again. Whereas, that's fishing. Whereas farming says, we're going to try bring someone into our system. So maybe we attract them, through social media, and maybe we attract them through our podcast. And then what we're trying to do is actually nurture these people. So maybe, and a prime example of this is, if I'm trying to attract somebody, what I'm doing is I'm trying to attract them, and then I need to get them into some type of nurture system, right? So, and that nurture system can either be, maybe an email list. Maybe your social media is your attraction. Maybe your podcast is your nurture, right? There's podcasting is one of those things. When you get into one, you probably listen to their podcast every week. So I would say it's a great nurturing system. So the way you got to look at it is we want to get their attention. We want to capture their information somehow, or at least get them into a nurturing system. And then obviously we have to lead them up to this point where we're nurturing them so much that they begin to trust us, and then we can ask for the conversion, right? We can ask for the sale. So you know, the way we got to look at it is you have to build a really strong brand, and then a brand that's differentiated, that says that you do things a little bit differently to everybody else out there. And then based on that, and based on the associations you're trying to create, then go and strategically express that through your marketing, and then put that into that system, right? So attention, some, if you can capture maybe some information, get them on an email list or something like that, or simply just get them, and start nurturing them through your social media, through your podcast, through these different channels, right? And these different platforms that you have available to you. So that's kind of like, that's basically a quick overview of how you can start to differentiate in the industry, and a little bit of an overview of how you can start to nurture clients and capture their attention. And there's a really cool I was listening to this on a podcast. So I'm not going to claim it. It's definitely not mine. But I was listening to a guy, and he talked about social media, and he talked about a great way to grow your social media following is, I think he called it clap, and it's content. So you got to have great content. You got to have a loop. So you got to loop people back around. So this is things such as competitions and these kind of things where you're getting people to loop back around and share your content and all of this kind of stuff. And then you've got ads. So ads are another great way where you can start to get more eyes on your content. And then partnerships, right? So partnering with companies that potentially will share your stuff and kind of help support you on that. And that's a great way to grab the attention of more and more people continuously. And if you cover all of those bases pretty well, you'll probably start to grow a bit of a following. And then from that, as I said, you enter them into this capture, nurture system, and start farming, right? Start, not asking for, expecting something straight away, but planting seeds and being consistent, so that when you do ask for a sale, you run an offer, or you've got something new coming out, people have that trust with you.
I really love and respect what you said about there about the nurturing, and it's almost like you're playing the long game with these people. It's not as someone sees something, maybe drops you a DM or leaves a comment, like, okay, I've got to sell this person. You're like, no, this person knows fuck all about you at the moment. They've got no trust. They've got no love for your product or your service yet. It's about going, okay, cool, you enjoyed this, great. Here's a little bit more, and over time, you'll get this person to go, hey, these people actually are genuine, good, kind-hearted people, it seems like, which is awesome. So you're building this element of trust. And yes, they do actually have.
Association.
Yes, yeah, association, perfect. And they actually do have the solution to the problems that I have, whether that's education, knowledge, wanting to build business, wanting to drop body fat, wherever the outcome is. And it's only through a long enough period of time that these people are going to be like, cool, yep, I'm happy to pay for whatever it is, because you've built that trust in me. And I've made the mistake plenty of times by, people being interested in something. Or cool, I need to sell you now. Or someone asking me a question in the gym, like, cool, you need to be my client. You're like, well, no, you don't need to be my client, but here's the answer to your problem. Do with it what you will. Hopefully it helps. And I think it just comes back to that. It's just having a genuine care for other people.
Yeah, I think, like, we use the term brand equity, right? So brand equity, it's like this thing that happens over time. You don't earn equity on a house in a day, but you do in a couple of years. And I'm not saying you should nurture people. I mean, you should nurture people for as long as they're there. But what you want to get to a point is, if you've got enough brand equity, because this is a big part of autonomy, right? So autonomy for us is brand equity. When your brand's paying you dividends while you're sleeping, that's when you've got a really strong brand, and that can really help you start to build some autonomy, right? And that comes from that nurturing, you know allowing people to make the decision when they're ready, and getting them into this nurture system where you're building that trust, and then getting them to a point where you're you know where they're ready to purchase, right? And that's a key insight, because what it does is it makes you think about, okay, well, maybe I bring them in, and then 10 weeks later they're ready to purchase. But if you're doing the work every single week, then every week you're going to have new customers who are ready to purchase. That's why I love podcasting, right? Like, podcasting is one of those nurture systems that it's like, it's fun to do, like I love jumping on podcasts, and I love recording them. So people can, they hear you talk over and over and over again to the point where like, okay, well, maybe I'm reached the problem. Maybe I'm starting to have a problem with growing my business, or, getting leaner or getting stronger, whatever it is. And then eventually, once they've listened to you enough, right, they will choose to, take that next step and purchase from you. But if you're doing the work consistently with these systems and you've got it set up properly, then you'll really have the ability to create brand equity, and that's where you can start to generate leads autonomously.
And it almost seems effortless, doesn't it? Like you essentially ask for the sale and they're like, yes. It's not a case of, hey, maybe you should buy, and you're just pushing, pushing, pushing. It shouldn't sort of feel like it, that it should get to a stage where they're basically like, oh, where do I buy?
100%, 100%. And that's the goal, right? Like, I mean, sales is very important, and I'm not shying away from that. And it's, I mean, I really think the mark of a great brand is, the less time and effort they have to focus on selling the individual, right? So I think brand equity is one of those things that does that for you. The more brand equity you build, the probably the less it costs you to acquire a customer, but also the less, both monetary and human capital, together it costs you. So I think, it's a really cool way to look at it. And that's one thing we're big on metrics, right? So, brand is one of those intangible things, but how can we start to get a grasp on maybe some ways that just give us an insight? We're not going to say they directly, give us, how, the effectiveness of our branding, but we can gain some insight from understanding our numbers. And all of a sudden, what I've just done there is we've started to now marry accounting and finance to brand, and this is what I'm talking about. That's where you really start to win the game of business, when you can think across many different subjects and start to marry them and look at the relationships. That's when it's like I make the example of understanding the relationship between physiology and psychology, and these different systems within the human body. Well, there's no different to business. Your ability to think laterally across the whole and understand the whole system is how you can start to make strategical decisions successfully.
Couldn't agree more. Elite Vitality is quickly becoming a bit of a monster in the industry, which I love. How are you on a routine day-to-day basis able to do so much with the same 24 hours as everybody else? Are you a routine oriented person?
Mate, I am absolutely a routine man. I have been probably since I got into business, to the point where I had a really good chat with Killian Hamilton last week on our podcast about the greatest asset in the world, and that is time. And I had this realization probably at the start of this year that the only way you can grow your business is by leveraging time better. And that's either your time or your team's time. So, my ability to grow my business and kind of continue to make progress, I'm going to be honest, is purely based on my team. I have a great team of people, Reese Livingston, Paddy Roach, two guys that work pretty closely with myself. And then we also have many more in the background. We have, I think, a team of 9 at the moment, 9 or 10. It's one of the two. At the moment, and that's a little example of how to grow a business. Really, you need to have a really great team, and the more leverage you can find with that team is going to determine how much progress you can make. But the other side of it is I'm really diligent with my time. I don't like wasting time at all. I get up at 4:45. I have a shower, I meditate, I do my morning routine, and then I study. So the first 2 hours of my day is study, and then I just time block. And it's not always a great day, but as I said, it's an iterative process, right? Like, I'm always trying to better leverage my time and kind of find ways to find more progress. So, whether that's hiring team, bringing on technology, whether it's just becoming more effective as a team, whatever that is, right? It's always about leveraging that time, and it's, to be honest, it's all dependent upon how I spend mine, right? So my time creates more leverage with everybody else's time by the way I spend it. So, you know, as I said, it's, if you looked at my diary, it's every single hour of the day is mapped out, including the time that I rest and relax. I'm not saying that it's 100% every minute of the day you should be working, but every single second is planned for me. And that's the way I find that I can better leverage my time when I have a really good grasp on it. And being diligent to that, and then continuously trying to make improvements and become more efficient is it's, I mean, you got to do it. I think you really do have to put a lot of effort into that, as an individual, if you want to be great at, become a great business owner.
What does the and we briefly touched on the morning, it's coffee, it's 2 hours of like meditation and self time essentially before the work's blocked out. But what does the other end of the day look like? So when the moment you finish, how do you shut off all that noise essentially, and then be able to optimize sort of recovery and sleep? What does that the last few hours look like?
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? So, um, a lot of my grunt work, I use my like I'm actually someone who trains to break up my day, right? So, I'm not a morning trainer. I usually train at about 4 o'clock, purely for that reason, right? So, it breaks my day up. It allows me to calm down and kind of take my mind away from business in totality. And then I come home and I've got a partner, right? So as I said, I dedicate time to my partner. That's just naturally how I have to do it. Otherwise, I love my work. If I could work 24 hours a day, I fucking would. Like, I truly love learning about business. So if I don't do that, then I'm not, I can sometimes be a horrible partner. So um, I time block it, and I use training as something to break my day. So as I said, I get my grunt work out of the way. So my grunt, when my grunt work is brain work, my brain works at its absolute peak, probably from around 9 till 11, I would say, every day. So I'm literally priming my day. I do, as I said, I'm usually finished my morning routine by around 6:30, 6:45, and yeah, 6:30. And then I'm straight into a cafe, coffee, and I'm studying. So then I'll study for 2 hours. And then by 9 o'clock, there's always something that I know is going to get me the best possible return, that if I spend my time on it. So that 9 to 11 block, I'm spending it on the thing that's going to get me the biggest return. And a lot of the time, that's creating and writing content. So, I'll be writing content for upcoming courses. I'll be trying to better get an understanding of how, the principles we want to teach and these kind of things. And then by the time it gets to 11 o'clock, I start to work with people. So, within our consulting service, maybe I have to do a group call. Some of my, there's potential clients I have to deal with. There's podcasts that we do. There's a lot of these things that, that, or sometimes people need my time. So a lot of my people work gets done, and then 4 o'clock, a lot of the time I'm breaking that up with a training session. And then after that, it gives me that good break. I'll usually come home, eat dinner, maybe nut out a little bit more work if I need to, but otherwise I'm probably head first into a book that I enjoy reading. Maybe a biography or something that's a little bit more of an enjoyable read to slow me down. And then, mate, I'm usually asleep by around 9:30, and calming myself down and straight back up again at around 4:45, give or take. There's going to be some times where I have to, dig the heels in a bit and really push it late with work. And I'm all for that. If you've got something to get done, and I'm not the type of person who will rationalize why I didn't, a lot of the time I'll just get it done. And I don't do that all the time, and I definitely don't recommend doing it all the time. But sometimes it's okay to push a little bit harder, in my opinion.
Who who's been one of the biggest inspirations in your life? Inspiration for this mentality, for this mindset? Who's been one of those biggest inspirations, and what did you learn from that particular person?
Oh man, across the journey, there's been a few. I think the first person was my stepfather. My stepfather is the person that my mother met, right? So this guy who at the start I was like, who the fuck is this guy, right? Like, that's naturally where my mind went. He was from overseas, but little did I know I had somebody who was probably one of the most impressive people I've ever met walk into my life. He's, ex-military, head of the English riot team, been mentioned in many books, been, like he's been into spirituality and human psychology around killing. um those two don't usually get mentioned in the same sentence, right? But he just come with a lot of experience, and I honestly say I wouldn't be here without him. He changed my life. I was a bit of a partier back when I was a little bit younger, and he's the person who I went to for help. and he kind of taught me a lot about life and taught me a lot about what it means to kind of just be a good person in a sense, and that held me in really good stead for a long time. Um, so I'd say him initially, like his name's Kevin Ellis. I did a lot of work with Ben Pakulski, who he was one of my personal mentors, and I must say he did help me a lot with some issues that that I had going on, and my mentality around the way I do work and how I prioritize things. So I would say that he definitely helped. Jordan Shallow, me and him are really good mates. I would say we're really close. We would talk very regularly, once every 2 weeks, and I think we have done for probably the last 2.5 years. But he would probably say he's learned a lot off me, but I must say that I learned so much off him as well. Um, more than he would know, and I do owe a lot of my innovation and my thought process around um, thinking critically to him, and the way he's carried out his business. So I would say Jordo's definitely one. And then there's a few out there that, there's a guy named Scott Galloway who I learn a lot off in business, who I would say a lot of my business brain and knowledge, the way he teaches it and the first principles that he teaches. He's someone that I would say has, in the last year, had a pretty big impact on myself, and in terms of his teachings. And they're probably the big ones if I look back over my time, that I would say have had the largest impact within different realms. And I could mention a ton of books and a ton of study and these kind of things, but they're probably the biggest individuals that the individuals that have had the biggest impact on me over the time. And there's a lot of life experiences that I would say have probably had a massive impact on me as well. Like things that not individuals, but actually experiences that I've experienced in life, like that story I told you before, going through that tough period where I was not sleeping much, and I went through some issues then, and kind of going through that has taught me a lot. I went on a 7-day silent retreat, which was really, really fun, and that taught me a lot. So there's a lot of life experiences that I say have probably taught me a lot as well. So that's probably a lot of the things. I think that's really important to acknowledge as well. Like you learn way more in life, in business, in everything from actually doing things, and actually gaining wisdom from experience. And I think that's what holds a lot of people back. I think they try to acquire knowledge without actually applying it, and then that's why they don't really see the progress they want, because you need to really experience something to understand it.
Yeah, I think there's our experiences are essentially who we become, whether good or bad. It's how we look at those and how we adapt to those and learn from those. And then that's going to instill our habits, behaviors, opinions, thought processes moving forward in our lives. So I think it's regardless of the things that you go through that are difficult and the obstacles, you have to go through them because it's the only way really we can grow.
Yeah, 100%. I would also, there's one I forgot. Sam Harris. I must say, I don't know him personally, but he, I've learned my meditation through him, and I was religious on his podcast for a good 2 years, and I still, listen to him quite regularly. And I would say that, his teachings on spirituality has just helped me navigate through life, um, in a, I don't even know the right word to use here, but, I truly think that I probably would struggle, without the knowledge and kind of, I guess, wisdom that I've learned from him in terms of understanding oneself. I think that's a really important factor. I'm not just all hustle and bustle. I think a big part of what I love about life is learning more about myself, and being able to do so because of the practices that I have in my life. I would say that if anybody is struggling, and if anybody uh, does struggle with their own mind and these kind of things, I definitely recommend having a listen to some of the stuff he puts out. He's got a really cool app on that as well, which is called
Waking up.
Waking Up.
Yeah.
Waking Up. I really love it. I think it's a cool app because it teaches you how to meditate. And some people will be like, "Yeah, meditation's not for me," and I totally, look. I used to be like, "No, it is," but I'm not. That's not what I'm here to do. He's got some really great conversations on there and just voice recordings that truly, like, I'll be honest, I listen to some of them and they can be life changing just from perspective. So I must say that, he's had his way of thinking when it comes to spirituality has had a massive impact on me as well.
What are a couple of the biggest lessons you've learned from yourself by building your own brand?
Building my own brand or business?
Brand.
Brand. Okay, brand. So um, I would say just understanding your brand on a much deeper level. Like, brand is so much more than just logos and colors. And I think that's the mistake we make. We look for what looks good and not what aligns. So when we're making strategic decisions based on external validation or external pressures. Everybody start wants to fit in, so everybody tries to do what's the norm or what's the current. And I think that it only leads, and you might get some quick success with it. And as I said, that's a tactical mindset, I think. But I think what creates sustainable success is that alignment and that true understanding of what you stand for. That for me is, again, the more and more people I speak to, the more and more people I realize have no fucking idea what they stand for or what they're trying to achieve. And that's what your brand does. Your brand is a vision. Your brand is, and it's the associations that you create. You've got your brand vision, it's where we're going, and then you've got your brand essence, it's who we are, right? And if you understand those two things, you're going to be pretty well equipped to make strategical decisions in your business, and you're gonna fucking find love for what you do, man. Like, you're gonna really have a drive there that is a bigger and greater purpose than your own feelings and emotion. And I think you've got to love what you do for it to be sustainable and to do it to the best of your ability. And that's where your brand comes in. And I think, as I said, brand is intangible; it's not tangible. So if you're currently focusing on your brand and you're only focusing on colors and logos and all this kind of stuff, you're not getting the most out of it that you possibly can. So that's probably one of them. And I think the second one that I would say is that brand is more. There's more to brand than just pre-purchase, right? So there's more to brand than just advertising. Brand covers three main touch points. It covers pre-purchase, purchase, and post-purchase, right? So pre-purchase is obviously your PR, your advertising, your marketing. Purchase is the point of sale. So the way you express brand at point of sale is really important. So that could be a sales conversation. If you're a facility owner, it could be the environment. It could be the aesthetics of the gym. It could be the way they sign up. And then you've got post-purchase, which is things such as like loyalty programs and again, for a gym, it's what kind of environment are you creating, or maybe it's a facility of some sort of clinic. What kind of environment is it? Potentially you could have paintings on the wall. What kind of paintings do you have on the wall that best express your brand? And what kind of things are you doing for your customers post purchase to create these associations that you're trying to create? So again, I think people get caught up in pre-purchase branding. So I think understanding that there's three main touch points in brand, and your goal is to communicate and express the associations you're trying to create through those um, different touch points, if that makes sense.
No, 100%. And I said brand first because business is going to be the next one. So, a couple of the biggest lessons you've learned building your own business.
Yeah. So cash flow, man. Like anything around cash flow, like making sure that you understand cash flow. Don't get caught up in the noise of revenue. Like, make sure your business is profitable. And then again, after that, make sure that you're productive. So make sure you're turning your profits into cash, because they are different. They're not, profit is a concept used in accounting. It's not money in the bank. So that's probably one of the biggest ones. And I would say, again, for the majority, right? Like, it's individual, but I would say everything cash flow. I really think cash flow is something that not enough people have a strong hold on. I think, um, creating a profitable business is so important, and making sure that you're building wealth. Like, I can't tell you that your ability to truly grow a successful brand is probably directly correlated with how compromised your decisions are. Like working because you can and working because you have to are two totally separate worlds. And if you don't get a stranglehold on your cash flow, then you'll always work because you have to. And that's not you're the best version of you. So I think getting a really strong hold on cash flow and understanding and building your financial literacy is an absolute superpower.
Mate, as we're sort of finishing off this show, I'm so grateful for your conversation here. But I want to know what's next for Elite Vitality. What do you guys got planned this year? Can you share anything?
Yeah, man. So we've actually made a bit of a pivot. We were doing short courses last year. We are currently working on a 10-week course. It's kind of like a mentorship program, but it's not one-on-one. So I'm not going to say that. It's a group course that you're going to go through where it's a mixture of video lessons and live lectures and group case study weeks and really trying to create a really cool educational experience. And that focuses on our first two levels of business, stability and growth. So for somebody who is either new in the industry or they're in their infancy in understanding business, it's going to be a really cool kind of project for us to put together, but also it's going to be super beneficial. I think it's basically a better version of what we produced last year in our short courses. And then we're building something really exciting, which is going to be pretty much the fitness industry's version of an MBA, which is probably coming in the second half of the year. So a lot of work in the background, a lot of building and kind of putting together the content and writing out these concepts. But that's the exciting things that are coming up for us from an education standpoint. And then we always offer business consulting, but it is only for a really it's a small number of people that we deal with. So that's kind of what we've got ahead, man. I'm really excited about this mentorship slash course. We're calling it the Diploma of Fitness Business. So we're pretty excited about it. I love it, man. I'm writing the content at the moment and kind of about halfway through, kind of restructuring, I would say, more than rewriting. We're taking a lot of what we've already written and adding to it and bringing it together in a better way, in a more digestible way that helps people on a greater level. So it's exciting, man. I was really struggled to take time off just because I was so excited about what we've got coming up. But I managed to get a few days in.
Yeah, that's good to hear. That's definitely good to hear, especially knowing a lot of the content from Ben. I'm sure he had some advice for you there to be able to just take that time for yourself. But man, I'm excited for this course as much as I'm sure the listeners are. So where do they stay tuned for that? Where can they find you, hear more and see more?
Yeah, awesome. So, I mean, I'm on Instagram, so is Elite Vitality. My handle is I'm getting better at Instagram, I promise. My handle is Kyle R Traynor, and our business page is Elite Vitality Education. It's not Elite Vitality Mastery. We had some troubles with Instagram, and we can't seem to get onto them, so we've had to pivot a little bit there, but that's all good. And then our website is elitevitalitymastery.net. So feel free to check that out and have a look at what we do.
Beautiful. And all those will be linked in the show notes below. As always, ladies and gentlemen, Kyle, from myself and the listeners, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure.
If you want to optimize your health, fitness, and lifestyle and learn the tools and the tricks and the knowledge to be able to sustain a healthy and fit lifestyle, then please go check out my books on my website. As a loyal subscriber, you get a cheeky little discount. So I'll see you in there.